All right, on today's marketing strategy session, we have Jerry with us, and he is going to talk about two types of advertisement. Talk a little bit about Facebook ads, and I know all of you have heard Facebook ads and have been using them for years probably. And then TikTok ads, which, most of us look at TikTok. We didn't even know they had advertisement, but they do. So Jerry, thanks for coming on and sharing some insights with us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between Facebook ads and TikTok ads. Let's just lay the foundation first before we start talking about how to leverage each medium.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things on any platform is understanding who the audience is on that platform, right? Because even if you compare sort of like Facebook to Instagram, it is a different demographic in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So always understanding who's on the platform and who you're trying to speak to directly, I think is so important. So going back to TikTok, it is a youthful platform right now. It is showing some good signs in terms of sort of like aging upwards. I think I read not too long ago that anywhere between the ages of 22 and 30 was the fastest growing demographic on TikTok right now. So that's pretty encouraging in terms of long-term sustainability on the platform, right? Because a lot of people see it for little dances right now.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to evolve into much more than that in the upcoming months, maybe a year, maybe two. We'll have to see. But it's definitely a neat platform. It's really changing the way people consume content. I think it really feeds on sort of our shortened attention spans.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very visually stimulating, a lot of moving parts. So it's definitely almost like a rabbit hole that keeps people going, right? So again, going back to understanding sort of like who's on the audience and the language, as I like to call it, is definitely knowing how people like consuming content on different platforms, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge a huge sort of like rule that you have to establish. And you have to create creative assets that sort of complement the platforms, if that makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah. I think creative is underspoken in today's sort of like ad world, or at least that's one of like my favorite parts about advertising is testing different creatives, seeing what works here and what works on another platform, or just in general, see what people are most responsive to. So at the end of the day, it's just a matter of knowing your audience, right?
Yeah. And that's been preached to time and time again. I mean, know your audience. When it comes to TikTok, I'm going to be honest with you. My little one, she is a TikTok guru, a TikTok master.
Awesome.
I just do the challenges when she sets it up and say, dance. And basically have me doing silly dances for her audience. But with that being more of an entertainment platform. So I've seen some people like Will Smith and some others do some very, very interesting posts. I would say highly produced posts, because sometimes you wonder how in the world did they do that type of post. But do you have to do, let's say, dances or magic tricks or things like that in order to really make a stand on TikTok?
Absolutely not, man. I think I'm living proof of that. I've been on TikTok for around 5 months now, and I'm keeping up on 200,000 followers. I haven't danced a single time.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what's really promising about the platform in the sense of like the direction where I think it could head ultimately. And essentially my style of posts just revolves around general marketing knowledge and branding. So I just formulate posts based off of that. And like going back to it, I haven't danced a single time, right? I like to call it edutainment in a sense, right? Something that's captivating. I don't go too in depth on specific sort of like strategies on Facebook or how to run Facebook ads or anything like that necessarily on TikTok, because it goes back to understanding the audience. Say, for example, a lot of times when I'm making a post for TikTok, one of the things that I like to think is if I were anywhere between 13 and 18 years old, and this is the first touch point that I ever have on this specific subject, would this be something that I find value in? And would this be something that sort of like piques my interest, right? So that's been able to work out tremendously well for me so far. And I'm really excited for what's to come on that platform specifically. I think it can be fun.
Ooh. Now, with the younger demographic on there, do you look at that as a business sustaining platform, being that a lot of the people that are on it may not be the ones that can make the purchasing decision?
Yeah.
Yeah, or is it just you influence the kids? Because like I'll refer to movies. The biggest selling movies are the ones that influence the kid because the kid has to bring the parents, and now you get 2 to 3 tickets for each one. But is this something that you influence the younger? I'm not going to say kids, but you're going to influence the younger generation, and that drives the brand awareness and sales, or do you go after the ones that actually hold the purse strings?
That's a really great question. And I think it's very hit or miss. Like me, for example, I'm not doing it sort of like a lead gen system for my business. For me, it's more so building a personal brand and trying to establish influence.
Okay.
And I'm looking sort of like at a long-term play, like these people these kids watching right now, in 5 or 10 years, they could potentially like cross over to a potential client. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm thinking like super long term, and just the organic reach of actually being able to reach so many people.
Jerry is doing the McDonald's and the Disney approach. You get them young, you make them loyal, and they're loyal for life.
Yeah. I mean, I myself am pretty young too. I'm 25. I think that's young. I don't know. I feel old, but I think that's young. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's sort of like a long-term play. And you can definitely explore other avenues if maybe YouTube is something in the picture in terms of like edutainment as well in the future. It's a really great way to funnel people over to different platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, your website, and whatnot. Now, that being said, I have gotten quite a few design clients specifically from TikTok, but I don't think it's a sustainable sort of like lead gen system right now to answer that question.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of, do you have a little bit of extra time and do you want to build a personal brand? Because if that's the case, if you answered yes and yes to both of those questions, I think the best use of your time right now is trying to establish yourself as an authority on TikTok for sure.
Okay. Now, do you see it going the way of Snapchat? You remember Snapchat rose, and then all of a sudden it kind of just leveled out, and not too many people talk about it as much anymore.
Yeah. Snapchat is interesting. I don't use Snapchat that much. Obviously when Instagram came in and adopted stories, it really it hit them hard in my opinion, right? Because they did that so well and it just integrated so beautifully to the current platform that they already had. That being said, the one thing that TikTok does so well is they're constantly making great updates to their app. They're constantly adding different features. They're constantly fixing bugs and improving different things, and they're constantly innovating. So I can see them sort of like establish themselves eventually as a long form platform. And imagine it as IGTV, not so much YouTube, but a bridge between sort of like stories and IGTV. Done right. That's the direction where I think TikTok will eventually end up heading.
Okay.
But again, only time will tell, right? It's for me right now, it's just the organic reach is so irresistible that it'd be foolish of me not to try and spend some time on there and cultivate a community.
Yeah. Now, speaking of spending time, do you spend a lot of time as far as like, I need to be very frequent and post several times, or do you kind of batch it, schedule it, maybe a post a day, a post a week, things of that nature?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The way I personally do it is I do hold myself to a standard of posting once a day. And it's really funny because when I first started, I was like, I'm going to post 3 times a week. And I thought that that was like so much, so much. But sort of like just in like any area of life, whenever you upgrade your standard or you up the ante just a little bit, it just becomes a norm, right? So typically what I do right now, I take a different approach to my content. If I have an idea, I just sort of write it out in a sense, sort of like bullet point script it out, put it on a sort of like a junior legal pad.
Okay.
And I just stash it away into like a little bucket, pull out a piece of paper. And at times, maybe like on a Sunday afternoon, I'll batch out all my videos for the week. So I have those ready to go. And that probably takes me around 15 to 20 minutes per video.
Okay.
So I've gotten quite speedy at it at this point for the amount of sort of like thought process that goes into it and how I support my videos visually.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, as you go on, you get quicker at it, you get better at it. And yeah, I mean, it's been great fun too. Even if it's just, you're not looking to necessarily make money off of it, monetize it. Even if you have a creative outlet that you want to share with the world, it's an incredible platform to communicate on.
Cool. Now, what's the difference between a TikTok ad and an Instagram or Facebook ad?
Okay, interesting. So my agency personally does not have access to the TikTok ad platform just yet,
Okay.
but I've spoken to other agency owners and they did sort of give me an inside scoop. In terms of sort of like interest targeting and conversion objectives, it's still fairly limited from what I've seen. It has sort of like traffic campaigns. I'm pretty sure it has conversion campaigns as well and brand awareness campaigns. I think it's only within those three pillars
Okay.
for the time being. I don't know if you're familiar with the Snapchat ads platform.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very similar to that in terms of superficiality on who you can target and sort of who you can reach right now.
Okay.
But I mean, over time, as they acquire more data, because you can bet yeah, they have a lot of data at this point, but little by little, they'll probably go out and purchase more. And
Okay.
obviously, as you do that, you can become more robust, sort of like the Facebook ad platform.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So that's going to be interesting to see how they roll that out.
absolutely.
We've seen other platforms, Snapchat, Twitter, that have rolled it out. And, it hasn't been what was expected.
Hmm.
Um, One reason, like you said before, you got the giants like Facebook and AdWords that are
Hmm.
gobbling up their techniques and just basically rolling it into those platforms.
Yeah.
But now as you've been working more on the organic side, with the organic side, would TikTok be more like, I guess you would say, Instagram, with reaching out to influencers, having influencers give shout outs or so forth to create that brand awareness? Or is just more like, I guess you would say, well, kind of Instagram, where hashtags rule the world, and if you have the right hashtags, right content in there, it just basically picks up from there.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. I don't think it's at the influencer stage just yet.
Okay.
In my opinion, it's just based off of how good is your content. So I'm gonna give you an example. I've been watching these young guns. They have a clothing company called Unexpected, and I've been watching them since January. That I think they were starting from zero. I think
Okay.
right now they're at like 300K followers. Insane. Like I've seen them grow. It's quite inspiring actually. But the thing that they do so well is that since they're young, they make videos sort of like going with the trends of the platform, highlighting their apparel, right?
Okay.
And just recently, they've been able to sort of like hook up different influencers on TikTok with their merch, with their
Wow.
apparel. So they kind of like bridge the gap from zero to hero in a matter of like 4 months by
Wow.
leveraging TikTok. But their content originally was sort of like, hey guys, help my brand get awareness. That way I don't have to go to college, stuff like that, right? So, and again, it really like speaks to the people on the platform, right? It
Yeah.
speaks the language of the platform. So if you have a brand that's sort of like tailored for people anywhere between 13 and 25 right now, I
Mhm.
think that if you're able to get creative with your messaging and your content style on TikTok, you really don't need to leverage influencers just yet. I mean, that organic reach is still really, really crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's a real good strategy for brands that leverage others to, promote their actual products. That is a great case study right there.
Oh, absolutely. I've been trying to reach out to them, maybe do a podcast with them because it's really interesting. Just how they've been able to leverage the platform to build a name for themselves. Not only that, I think they grew their Instagram to like 80,000 followers as well. So they're solidifying their presence on multiple platforms through
Okay.
TikTok. So
Now, really how do you do that cross platform campaigns? I mean, do you say follow us also on Instagram, or do you just kind of have some way of transferring them over? I mean, how does that work?
I think asking people to follow you unless they're very, very loyal to you doesn't work. I think it's like you have to incentivize people to follow you. So what I've seen personally is giveaways. You sort of like promote a giveaway on TikTok, and the part two to actually enter the giveaway would be by following a set of rules on an Instagram post, whether it's like, comment, share, and make sure you're following our page to enter the giveaway. And progressively, if you do those consistently without making them overplayed in a sense, I think you'll be able to cross-pollinate your audience.
Okay, that's great advice right there. Yeah, without saying, hey, you know, we need more followers, so we'll give you a free coupon and follow us over here.
I think always asking for followers, it never hurts, right? But if you incentivize them, I think it gives them all the more reason to actually follow through with it.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, you also have worked diligently in Facebook ads.
Absolutely.
How do you approach strategically your Facebook advertising?
Very interesting. So again, it's very contextual depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve, what business it is that you're serving. One of the things that I always emphasize is, to me, advertising in general is a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay.
A lot of people want to see like overnight results and sales out the wazoo incredibly quickly. And yes, you will get a couple sales, you will get consistent traffic, and you will be able to acquire conversions relatively quickly. But always have sort of like a long-term vision and build a plan around that vision on any ad platform, in my opinion. But yeah, let's take an example. Let's say, I don't know, what's a good business that you could think of, that a product or service that you'd be trying to sell?
Well, let's go with apparel, since we've already been on that path.
Apparel's interesting. So apparel, for me, particularly on apparel, I've never really dabbled with that business specifically, but off the top of my head, I would want to give people a reason to want to buy my apparel, right? So over to, I think in this specific scenario, advertising would just be the cherry on top. I think when it comes to apparel, you really have to have a really strong brand, in the sense that what do you represent and who do people identify with your brand, right?
Okay.
And then you can get creative. Say, for example, you have an Instagram page with, I don't know, 50K followers, right? So you already have an audience. You're pushing out a new collection, your summertime collection and whatnot, and you're drawing people organically to your store through your link in your bio. Okay. But you see off of your pixel data, sort of like a drop off in conversion. Maybe your add to cart to actual purchases are a little bit low. What I would personally do there is that I would create an audience based off of people that added to cart but didn't go through with the entire purchase. Create an ad, a witty looking ad that says, hey, you left something behind. Here's 10% off, or here's free shipping, right?
Okay.
So that's going back to the cherry on top, right? It being a part of the general and whole plan, as opposed to just heavily relying on, hey, I have this new product, I have to push it out with ads. And it does work, going back to it. But for this specific situation, in this scenario, I think retargeting can be very strong, especially for those sort of like lost purchases, those lost parts. So that's a really good way to sort of leverage Facebook ads specifically in that situation.
Okay. So you're looking at more of basically your strengths and capitalizing on your strengths. So they're already interested, and you're just giving them more reason to work with you, versus focusing on your weaknesses and saying, well, I just need to put more and more into the funnel, even though I'm not really optimizing the ones that are getting in the funnel in the first place.
Absolutely. And if you take it a step further, if you say that you want to acquire like a new audience per se, one thing that I would do, I would make a very strong brand awareness video, sort of like what does, in terms of lifestyle, what does your brand represent, right?
Okay.
Maybe not a particular item of clothing, but what this does, if you're able to target the right people, you're going to be speaking to audiences and bringing them into your community, right?
Okay.
By bringing them into your community, what I mean by that is essentially making them a loyal follower, right? Mm-hmm. If I identify with maybe like gym apparel because they represent a certain characteristic that I find very attractive, right? Maybe like grit or something that really like calls to me and something that's I'm drawn into. Mm-hmm. Maybe I start following them. Maybe I won't purchase anything for the first month, 2 months, 3 months. But as time goes on, I'm well aware of their existence, and little by little, I'll be able to actually get curiosity and go on their website, maybe look at some products. And I think that's when retargeting can actually be leveraged to your advantage as well.
Okay. So Nicole and I was talking earlier today about that, about especially millennials. Mm-hmm. They buy more into the movement. They buy more into your company culture than they do what you offer.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think we're really, I mean, even if you look back as humans, we're very, we like to identify with a specific group, right? Mm-hmm. And I think brands are gravitating towards attracting specific groups. So it's almost, let's set the example of a sports team, right? Mm-hmm. Different brands can represent different sports teams, but the question is, who do you identify with and why do you identify with them in the first place? Is it because they're the local team? Is it because they have a star player? In this case, it could be sort of like an influencer, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why do you identify with them? Is it their values? I think there's just so much more to it. I think advertising at this point for this specific situation mm-hmm. is just sort of like that cherry on top, and it's part of it, but it's not 100% the plan.
Okay. Yeah. How many times do you go back throughout the year and modify the whole strategy versus just pieces of the strategy?
That's interesting. I think there's there's like a very, what would you say? Not as sensitive, but you kind of have to establish rules behind it, right?
Okay.
In advertising, I do have sort of like a set of rules on when to cut an ad, when to scale. So looking back on it, you have to be patient with the process, okay. But there does have to be a time where you're saying, okay, this is working or this is absolutely not picking up at all, right? And you have to be very black or white with it. There's really like no in between. But in terms of sort of assigning a timeline to it directly, that's a tough answer to give you. I think it's very contextual. Again, I don't think there's a set answer for that.
Okay. But the answer really is that you have an overall strategy, and then you have individual strategies within that overall strategy that works. So
absolutely.
So rounding it off, we have our good, bad, and ugly segment.
All right.
Where you can talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of marketing. So I mean, in this regards, it could be Facebook, it could be TikTok, it could be marketing overall.
Okay. Let's talk about the good. It's always good to start on a positive note, right? I think if we're speaking marketing specifically, like what do we mean? Do we mean sort of like the opportunity to actually reach people in ways that we couldn't maybe like 15 years ago, or?
Yeah. I mean, just any aspect of good marketing that you found, good best practices, things that have moved the needle for you or your clients.
Yeah, I think just in general, understanding that the opportunities that specifically Facebook ads provides to a business that's starting out as opposed to 15, 20 years ago, it's insane. You literally have the opportunity to buy media space like in the same place as like a large brand like Coca-Cola, like Nike, like Adidas. Like you literally have the opportunity to get in front of the same people, essentially, right? Not only that, like the targeting, just in terms of interest and everything that you can do based off of custom audiences and lookalike audiences is just insane. The amount of sort of like leverage that that gives you and your business is really a blessing, I think. So I think that's a really good aspect and an overall direction of where sort of these ad platforms are headed. So that's very exciting. In terms of bad, I don't see too much downside to it, really. Again, it sort of like evens the playing field for people with a smaller business to be able to present themselves in front of their target audience at a relatively low cost, right? Instead of buying a billboard for 12K a month that you can't really measure its results and you don't really have like detailed metrics, here you can literally see every single detail of who's clicking, how many times are they clicking, what's your frequency, how many times are they seeing the ad, right? Who's actually purchasing, who's not, what demographics are more interested. It gives you everything. It's really cool. I can nerd out on that. It's really, really cool. I think the ugly, if I may say so myself, is I see a lot of people contaminating the space with misinformation, or it might not even be misinformation, but I think at times they don't really provide a lot of context to the advice that they're trying to give.
Okay.
And a lot of times people hear this set piece of information and they'll go and try it themselves and say, oh, it didn't work. But in reality, it didn't work because it doesn't necessarily apply directly to what it is that you're trying to achieve. So you have to be sensitive about who you're listening to, and at the same time, if that piece of advice directly applies to what it is that you want to achieve.
Yeah, that's great advice, actually. That is great advice to give, because a lot of businesses are following certain pieces of content, and they're looking at it as a business advice when it might not be per se business advice. It may be more for affiliates or opportunities, that type of thing, but not for a brand or business in that same setting, because it's a different audience altogether. Yeah.
It's not a one size fits all type deal. Like, do your homework, see what makes sense to you. And I think a lot of things, a lot of times people misunderstand that marketing at the end of the day, it's just common sense, common sense applied. So don't lose sight of that. I feel like in today's society, we do sort of try and overcomplicate things. I'm sure you're familiar with the famous phrase "KISS," keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
And yeah, oftentimes it is incredibly. You'll be baffled at how simple maybe your creative or your message might be, but how effectively you're able to communicate what it is that you want to your audience by just keeping it simple.
That makes sense. Well, everybody, y'all keep it simple. and we like to thank Jerry for coming on and sharing this insight. Been a world of knowledge, because like I say, TikTok is fairly new, and approaching it, you have to approach it differently. And then also, overall, I mean, he shared a lot of information, not only with TikTok and Facebook, but just overall marketing sense, I would say. So thank you for that. Hopefully everybody got a lot. I did learn myself things about it. Like I say, you won't see me dancing too much on TikTok, but I appreciate you sharing all these insights and helping. If you're looking to find out more about Jerry and how he's leveraging his, feel free to follow him. His website is marketing-and.com. So don't spell out dash. It is a dash. So marketing-and.com. And then from there, just follow him on social, see how he's maneuvering his brand. And then, of course, understand that his brand is not your brand. So we need to look at how can you get your brand strategy put together and then execute that. So thank you, Jerry, so much for being on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it. I had fun.
Great, great. And everybody, I look forward to your comments. I look forward to any questions that you have because we want to assist you in growing your business.